How could you sell our country house? You idiot, I already promised it to my mother and you ruined everything. Fine, then give me the money from the sale. At least I can somehow compensate my mom for your brainlessness. Those were the first words my husband, Caleb, screamed at me that morning. Not a hello. Not a question. Just fury dressed as entitlement. My name is Marissa Lane, I'm 32. And if you think this story is about property, it isn't. It's about value. The kind you can't measure in square footage. He stood in the kitchen, veins visible on his neck, clutching a mug he hadn't even poured coffee into. The morning light fell across the marble counter, catching the tremor in his hands. Marissa, you had no right, he shouted. That house was supposed to go to my mother. Your mother never owned it, I said calmly. It was in both our names and I handled the mortgage payments for 3 years while she played landlady in her head. He slammed his fist against the table. She already told everyone she's moving in. What am I supposed to tell her now? Tell her the truth, I said. That the sale was necessary. We needed liquidity, and I didn't want to go bankrupt pretending your family still lived in the 1950s. His expression twisted, half anger, half disbelief. You're unbelievable. You'd rather have money than family. No, I replied softly. I'd rather have respect than servitude. He scoffed, rubbing his temples. Then give me my half of the sale. I'll make things right. I looked him in the eye, letting the silence stretch between us. You mean the half you already spent? Or the part tied to the bank account I closed last night? His face paled instantly. What did you do? I made sure, I said, my voice steady, that the next mistake you make won't cost me everything. His jaw dropped. You can't. Oh, I already did. He stalked toward me, breath hot, eyes drowning in a panic he tried to disguise as anger. You can't just. Where did the money go? You can't take our home and then hide the cash. I set my mug down with calm. I'd practiced for months. I didn't hide it. I redirected it. Redirected? Redirected where? Don't play games, Marissa. His voice scraped. He thought he could bully confusion into compliance. It wouldn't work. Not anymore. 2 years of late nights at the startup, 2 promotions I'd negotiated alone, every freelance graphic job I'd taken while he polished his name at cocktail parties. Those were the ledger lines I had kept private. The country house had been a shaky investment. The buyer offered a clean, immediate sum. I accepted. I paid the brokers, the lawyers. And before he could blink, I moved the proceeds through the channels I'd already set up. Escrow into a restricted trust, a portion to secure our taxes and the remainder, earmarked and legally protected, into an account titled Lane Family Continuity Trust with me listed as trustee. Why would you do that? He sounded wounded, more confused than furious now. Why not just talk to me? Because for the first time I was talking. I explained, steady. The house paid for him living off family expectations. I paid the mortgage every month while you declared spending networking. When your mother decided entitlement was owed, I decided I wouldn't be collateral. He glanced at the polished table, at the wedding photo in the frame where his arm was draped possessively around me. You're being dramatic. Maybe, I allowed. Or maybe I'm being realistic. I watched the muscle in his jaw twitch. You'll get access to a portion, conditional, with financial counseling and a repayment plan. You'll have dignity to rebuild. You'll also have boundaries to learn. He laughed then, small, brittle. And if I refuse? Then the money stays protected. And you learn that promises made to mothers don't trump legal agreements. He sputtered, words and entitlement collapsing into a small, panicked mess. For the first time I saw him as he was. A man who expected life to be a menu where he could order other people's choices. I felt nothing like triumph. Only a clear, cool choice finally acted upon. Caleb's rage collapsed into something else that morning. Fear. He followed me around the living room like a man watching his own safety net burn. Marissa, please, you don't understand. Mom counted on that house. She already told her friends she'd retire there. You've humiliated us. I turned, slow, deliberate. Us? You mean her? Because the only thing she's ever retired from is accountability. He winced. His phone buzzed. Mom calling. I could see the panic bloom. Don't pick it up, I said. You'll just make another promise you can't keep. He ignored me, of course. Mom? Yeah, she sold it. Oh, I don't know why. I'm trying to. He paused, color draining. What do you mean she moved her savings already? I knew exactly what she meant. I'd seen the hidden withdrawals weeks ago, Caleb transferring funds into his mother's temporary holding account. When I confronted him, he called it helping family. I'd called it stealing from our future. Now his betrayal came full circle. Marissa, he stammered, lowering the phone. You told her? I tilted my head. Told her what? That I finally looked at the joint statements? Or that you used me like a personal ATM? His shoulders collapsed. The truth had done what arguments never could. Silence. I stepped closer, my voice almost kind. You can still fix this, Caleb. You can start by calling your mother and telling her no. You can tell her the house wasn't hers. And you can tell yourself the same thing. He sat down, shaking. For a moment I saw a boy lost in the ruins of his own entitlement. I just wanted to make her proud, he whispered. Then maybe start by being someone you'd be proud of, I said, picking up my keys. Because the next part of this story wasn't his anymore. It was mine. I drove straight to my lawyer's office that afternoon. The smell of rain mixed with the faint scent of leather and coffee as I sat across from Ms. Harmon, a woman whose calm made chaos feel small. You did the right thing, she said after reading the documents. You were listed as the primary mortgage payer and joint owner. You had every legal right to sell. Caleb thinks I betrayed him, I murmured. He says I embarrassed his mother. Harmon gave a soft, almost sympathetic smile. His mother's humiliation was self-inflicted. You didn't take her home. You just stopped living in her illusion. I let that sink in. For years his family had treated me like a guest in my own marriage. Decisions made in group chats I wasn't part of, dinners where they talked over me, endless reminders that he was their golden son. Me. I was lucky. Now I was finally done being lucky. I was done being used. As I left the office, Caleb's name flashed across my phone for the 5th time. I didn't answer. I knew he wasn't calling to apologize, he was calling to negotiate. That night he showed up at my apartment door, drenched from the rain, clutching a crumpled folder. You froze our accounts, he said quietly, his voice trembling. Mom's furious. She says we're finished. I leaned against the doorway. You're finished, Caleb. You, her, and the house you all thought you owned. He swallowed, eyes glistening. Where am I supposed to go? The same place I had to, I said. Forward. As the door closed between us, I felt something shift. Not victory but peace. The kind that comes when a woman finally stops apologizing for saving herself. Days bled into one another after Caleb left. The silence in the apartment was thick but not heavy, a kind of silence that hummed with relief instead of loneliness. For the first time in years I could hear myself think. Then on Friday morning a letter slid under my door. The envelope bore his mother's perfect cursive. Inside, a single handwritten note. You've ruined my son's life. You took everything he had, and for what? Money. You'll regret this. I traced the last sentence with my thumb, feeling nothing but pity. Her threats had lost their power. Paper couldn't hurt anymore. That afternoon Ms. Harmon called. Marissa, you should know. Caleb's mother tried to contest the sale. I blinked. On what grounds? She's claiming emotional distress and implied ownership. But she has no documentation. And your financial records are airtight. Of course they were. I'd made sure of that. For every receipt, every tax form, every proof of payment, my name stood alone. By the weekend the story reached his extended family. Cousins called. One even texted, "You didn't have to go that far." I didn't reply. The truth didn't need a defense. Instead I poured myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the rain beat against the glass. The city lights blurred, shimmering like quiet applause. On my desk lay a folder labeled Future Projects. Not revenge, rebuilding. I'd already applied for a grant to open a community co-op in the neighborhood where I grew up. A space for women rebuilding after financial manipulation. This time my energy would create growth, not rescue. And for every woman who ever signed something she didn't fully read, I wanted to be the reminder. You can rewrite the ending. That night when my phone buzzed with Caleb's message, "Can we talk?" I typed back 2 words. Through lawyers. Monday morning brought the expected storm. The police report, the attempted lawsuit, the desperate PR play. Caleb's mother posted online that I stole their family property. The comments section turned into a battlefield. But within hours the truth began surfacing. Public records confirmed the house deed had my name only. Screenshots of her bragging about finally getting my son's house back started circulating in local groups. Karma didn't knock, it kicked the door open. Ms. Harmon called me again that evening. "They're withdrawing the complaint," she said, sounding almost impressed. "Apparently, someone leaked proof that Caleb forged your signature on a loan application last year. They don't want this going public." The air left my lungs slowly. So that's how they plan to fund their mother's new home. "Exactly," she said. "If this surfaces, they'll be facing charges." After the call, I sat on the edge of my couch processing it all. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the emotional blackmail. It had always been about control, not love. Ethan, my neighbor from across the hall, knocked gently. "You okay?" he asked, holding out a takeout bag. I managed to smile. "Better than I've been in years." We sat together, the city hummed beneath us, eating in comfortable silence. Felt strange, normal. No tension, no obligation, just peace. "Can I say something?" he asked softly. "I've seen people destroy themselves trying to fix others. You did the opposite, you fixed yourself." Something in me melted. Maybe healing wasn't loud. Maybe it was small dinners and quiet rooms and the realization that peace didn't need witnesses. That night I dreamed of the house, not as a battlefield but as empty space ready for something new. The next morning a letter from the court arrived. Case dismissed. And just like that the chapter closed itself. The weeks that followed felt like breathing for the first time after being underwater for years. My phone stayed quiet. No threats, no guilt-soaked messages, no midnight apologies crafted for control. Just silence. I filled it with music again. With sunlight. With plans. One Saturday morning I drove past the old country house. The one Caleb thought he'd lost to me. The for sale sign had been replaced by new owners repainting the porch. A young couple laughed as they carried in boxes. Their joy didn't sting, it soothed. That place no longer held me hostage. Later Ms. Harmon called one last time. "You'll get a refund from the overpayment after the closing," she said. "And Marissa, congratulations. You handled this with more grace than most clients ever could." Grace. The word lingered like a warm light in my chest. That night Ethan and I walked downtown for coffee. The autumn air carried the scent of roasted beans and rain on pavement. "So," he said, "what's next for you?" I thought about it. Something mine. Maybe a new start. Maybe a new business. He smiled. "Just don't give anyone your keys again." I laughed for the first time in months. Lesson learned. The next morning I stood by my window as sunrise spilled across the skyline. I thought of the woman who once signed papers she didn't understand, who bent over backward to keep peace at the cost of herself. She no longer existed. A message pinged on my phone, an unfamiliar number. "Mom's been hospitalized. He's asking for you." I stared at the words, unmoving. My hands didn't tremble this time. After a long pause I typed back one word. Prayers. Then I turned off my phone and opened my laptop, ready to start the life they never imagined I could build. It's strange how justice doesn't arrive with trumpets, just quiet, steady truth. A week later the headlines broke. Local man arrested for forgery and fraud. Caleb's photo flashed across every feed, his mother beside him, both facing charges for falsifying property and loan documents. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I simply closed the article, turned off my phone and exhaled. Peace, it turned out, wasn't loud either. That afternoon I drove to the countryside, not to reclaim the house but to say goodbye. The porch paint was fresh now, wind chimes fluttering where once there were arguments. I left a small envelope in the mailbox addressed to the new owners. May this home be everything it never was for me. Safe, honest, full of laughter. On the drive back Ethan called. "You free tonight?" "I am now," I said, watching the skyline shimmer in the sunset. We met at the Riverside Cafe, the air crisp with evening mist. He reached across the table, his hand finding mine naturally without ceremony. "You finally look like you can breathe," he said. "I can," I whispered, because I stopped trying to convince people who never listened. Later that night I stood by my window again. The city lights reflected in the glass like thousands of small, forgiving stars. I thought of the woman who once apologized for existing, who stayed silent to keep the peace. She was gone. Tomorrow the papers would finish transferring the last asset into my foundation's account. The one supporting women escaping financial abuse. The cycle was ending where healing began. I picked up my pen and signed the final document, my name steady for the first time in years. Freedom, after all, isn't given. It's taken back. Quietly, completely, and on your own terms.